DJ Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? It's week 14. We are getting through the grind and we are here. It's the DFS DJ Nation pod. I'm your host, Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me on Twitter. Ryan Williams is the government name I go by. And I'm joined by my usual co-host, Kevin Steele at Fantasy Rat 13 is where you can find him on Twitter. And Kevin, we got an interesting slate here for week 14 to dive into. Full game slate, it looks like. Lots of DraftKings contests that we can talk about and are going to break down. We're here in the Millie, looking at all the different positions and who we're going to play. And the Millie's got an interesting $50K NFL team win bonus for all 9 of your players. Getting a team win, you're eligible to qualify for that $50K bonus. So that's a fun one. Little enticing thing there for the Millie Maker. But Kevin, talk to the people. How are you doing? How is your week 13? Give them a little spiel before we get into the slate.
Yeah, it went pretty good. The season long side of it did not. I got I don't play a ton of season long. I actually only have like one outside of the SFB and everything that I have, and I got eliminated this week, which is crazy. I had the most points in the league. I was up by almost 300 next to the next closest person in the league. That's how.
Wow.
And I got kicked out of the playoffs. So I didn't make the playoffs, I should say. It's just one of those years, crazy luck, but it is what it is. It's fine. We still have DFS, and my DFS week was pretty good. Didn't have any crazy lineups, but I did come real close on the afternoon only slate. Had a lineup that I just played. The only lineup that I played Kyler Murray in happened to be the Nuts lineup. Had everybody in it outside of I had Kyler instead of Goff, which I played a ton of Jared Goff last week. He was my top play on the slate, and that just happened to be the one lineup I didn't play him in. Had I played him, it would have taken it down. I would think it was 10K to first, so that was a little bit tilting. But overall, it was still a good week in the green, so that's all you can really ask for.
Damn, yeah, that definitely is tilting. We talked about Robert Woods on the podcast too, just being cheap, being in a good spot. So it was nice that you were able to get some exposure to him there over on that afternoon slate. And Kev, we got a fun week 14 slate ahead of us. We got Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes at quarterback. Couple interesting spots we have with injury news, and we're recording this on Wednesday of the week, so not as much news, and we only had a couple practices right now to go off of. So very early look here for the DFS DJ Nation pod, but we appreciate everybody who's joining in and listening in for the pod. So as always, our pods go live on YouTube through StreamYard, so we appreciate everything that StreamYard's been able to offer us this year. It's been a lot of fun. So you can go onto YouTube channel, watch us live. You can go back and watch us, subscribe to the channel, like the pod. We really appreciate all the interaction we've been getting there. And as well, we got our free DFS Slack chat going. I guess it's the free TFA Slack chat with the DFS channel. We definitely want you guys in there. So if you're new to the pod, or if you have only been in for a little bit, kind of getting a taste of it and want to get in on that Slack chat, just DM the DJ Nation pod at DFS DJ Nation, or at DJ Nation pod, on Twitter. And then you can also DM Kev at Fantasy Rep 13. We'll definitely get you guys in there. Appreciate all the traffic on our normal podcast softwares, as we're on iTunes, Stitcher, what have you, and we're getting a lot of traction there as well too. So we appreciate that. And without further ado, Kev, let's kind of get into the slate and dive right in at quarterback position, as we always do. And like I said, we got Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes both on the slate, both in tough matchups here, going against Buffalo and New England, respectively. So Lamar Jackson on the road against Buffalo, played against San Fran at home last week, had a pretty decent outing because of that 100-yard rushing upside that he offers pretty much every week. It seems like Lamar Jackson just having an incredible year, MVP year. What he's doing on the ground is absolutely remarkable. So I feel like he's always in play just because of that. I feel like if I was going to pay up for one, I would probably go Lamar just because of the floor that he offers there. I just feel more comfortable, and it just seems like Baltimore just always is finding ways to put up points. The run game is very suspect. You can't trust them. So Lamar Jackson, I think, to me, is in play because of the dual threat that he offers. But then we got Pat Mahomes going against New England, and this is a game that kind of has a lot of implications on it, I guess. For one, if Buffalo wins that home game against Baltimore and New England loses this game after losing the Houston game, they're really in trouble with Buffalo here in losing the AFC East, which is just crazy to think about because they've had it on lock for so long. But Pat Mahomes could really put an end to the reign there for New England as the team still play once, I believe, on this year. These teams played in the playoffs last year, Kev, and you're the KC guy, so I'm sure you have a lot to say about this game. Pat Mahomes offers GPP winning upside every week that he's on the slate. Kind of disappointed some people last week, so I feel like a lot of people might be scared off of him, as pretty much Lamar and him flip-flop prices. But it's Pat Mahomes. He's going to go out there. He's going to play. He's going to ball out. Damian Williams, I think, is banged up. The running game situation is all over the place. So it could be a Pat Mahomes every week. I'd like to get your take on the top two guys as we get into the slate. We're usually talking about our favorite plays at the position. So before I kick it off to you, Kev, I'm looking at this slate early on. I'm loving what I'm seeing at Kyle Allen. He's 5,700 going on the road against Atlanta. But as we talked about last week, Kev, Kyle Allen, he has a narrow distribution of targets. That checks the box for me. He's been playing in pretty good matchups and putting up points in that regard. Pretty much flirting around with a floor of just around 20. I mean, that the Atlanta game, I feel like, was an anomaly. He had the 4 interception game, and people are like talking about him like he's not good. And I just don't know like where this is coming from. I mean, he's been pretty decent, I feel like, all year, especially from a fantasy standpoint. I mean, really, the ugly game against Atlanta and then the ugly game against San Francisco, but we know who San Francisco is at this point. So, he is a poor man's Matt Ryan right now, as he's flirting with 300 yards pretty much every week. And you compare him with guys, DJ Moore, 7K, and we can talk about that at wide receiver, but Curtis Samuel is only 4,900. I think that's one of my favorite quarterback to wide receiver stacks this week. The red zone share for Curtis Samuel's there. And also he's got a lot of air yards too to pile on top of that. So it seems like Kyle Allen's just missing him. Greg Olsen should be out this week. So I feel like, and Christian McCaffrey's in play every week. So I feel like Carolina stacks are really some way that I want to go, and potentially running back with maybe one piece on the other side. But then, Kev, this is going to be ugly, but I'm actually considering going Delvin Hodges as well too, on some in cash. But in a GPP as well too. It looks pretty low flourish as we're not seeing, only one touchdown, really not putting up a ton of yards there. But this Arizona team, the matchup is just so good. So I'm definitely interested in him, even at his price. They're giving up the most touchdowns to the quarterback position. They've given up the most yards to the quarterback position. They're giving up the most DK points to the position. So, and Delvin Hodges has been winning games for Pittsburgh. What game against Cleveland, which this was a defense that we thought was pretty decent, but only put up 11.8. They really didn't need him all that well. It was a tough matchup. Cincinnati as well. There was an ugly game. Finley was starting that game, so that's ugly. And the Chargers, that game has been ugly, and he came in. So I think if Arizona is able to put up some points here, we could see him forced to throw a little bit more. And just when you're talking about an on-paper matchup, I do like trying to get some exposure to him. And the third guy for me would be Sam Darnold. Now, Sam Darnold, people had been talking about him in redraft. I heard you guys talk about him a couple weeks ago in the redraft pod when he was coming back from the mono, and he's 6K now. He's disappointed a lot all season, but he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. The attempts are there. He just threw for 48 times against Cincinnati in a favorable matchup that was for the running back. And again, another team in Miami where we've targeted quarterbacks against them pretty much all season long. They're giving up the second most touchdowns to the quarterback position. The yards have kind of dwindled down there. They're only giving up the 10th most there, but still, giving up a pretty decent spot, 5th most DK points to the quarterback position. Jamison Crowder is criminally cheap. Robbie Anderson, I feel like, is always in play, and Ryan Fitzpatrick plays on the other side. So I think this could be a sneaky, or not even sneaky. I think this could be a decent shootout here in a game that we saw put up some points the last time these two teams met. So those are the 3 quarterbacks that I'm looking at here in that mid-range and who I'm leaning on. Kev, where are you at right now with quarterback, and what are you finding in your early look builds as we get to week 14?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of different, places that I want to go this week, at least starting now. But Lamar Jackson, is always in play because of his rushing ability. But this is really not a good matchup on the road against Buffalo, though we've seen him play against other teams that, like last week against San Francisco at home. And, he still, gave you a pretty solid floor. What do you have? 26.3, which is actually, one of his lower weeks that he's had all year. You have to go back to week 5 really to find the last time he did not score, I believe, 30. So, or week 9, excuse me. But regardless, it was still a pretty solid week. But going against Buffalo this week, this game's on the road. Buffalo has allowed the 3rd fewest rushing yards to quarterbacks. They've allowed the second fewest points to quarterbacks as well. So this isn't the best matchup, and at 7,400, there's just so many really good matchups at quarterback this week. I just don't think you have to play Lamar Jackson at 7,400. The other one is probably Pat Mahomes, like you mentioned, and I'm not really sure at this point what to make of this game. I know this game has a pretty high point total. Kansas City's on the road going to New England. We saw New England last week get exposed a little bit against the Texans because of the fact of how much team speed they have. And if that is one way to beat New England, then New England's going to be in a world of hurt because, Houston does not have the speed that even Kansas City does. So I think this game is going to be one where we've also seen positive line movement already for Kansas City. They opened as a 3-point underdog. Now it's already been bet down to 2. And I think that gets a little bit closer where it could end up being a pick 'em. Which is crazy to think of New England on the road, but New England's offense has been so bad. And I know people are like, well, yeah, but look at his numbers, Tom Brady's numbers from last weekend. I'm sorry. Like most of that was garbage time. And, where New England really strives, and Tom Brady has been, that Dick and Duck type of offense. That they're not a downfield, explosive offense like that. And Kansas City has been. That's one area of their secondary that they've really done really well in, is that short area passes. So for me, like I think this game does have some shootout potential, and I think this is a kind of a revenge game for Kansas City, who obviously got kicked out of the playoffs last year by New England. So, Pat Mahomes is always in play, but I just don't know if you really need to this week. Like, I will have some Pat Mahomes exposure. I'll probably have him stacked with Tyreek. But for right now, like, I just don't think you have to play him, because I think there's a lot of guys that, that I think are in just much better spots. And like, for me, starting at Kirk Cousins, Kirk Cousins is balled this year going against Detroit. They're at home. And I mean, he's played very well. And I think you can at least expect at least 20 points. We've seen this matchup already once this year, but Detroit's secondary is atrocious, certainly beatable. But the last time they played, he scored 32, 330 and 4 touchdowns. And if, if Detroit even can keep this a little bit close, then I think that you can consider, or you should definitely want a ton of exposure to Kirk Cousins. I think Deshaun Watson all the way down at 6,500 is a little bit too cheap. I know they're playing Denver, and some people might be afraid of it, but Denver is certainly a defense that can be burned deep as well. And, with that team speed they have there in Houston, I think you're going to see a lot of Will Fuller and Kenny Stills. So, and obviously DeAndre Hopkins is always in play, but I like Deshaun Watson quite a bit this week as well at 6,500. And then from there, there's a couple other ones here in this, low 6, 5K range. And starting off, like you already mentioned, Sam Darnold. I don't need to get in with him. Like I think that's a place you can go to. Ryan Fitzpatrick, even though he's 6K, it's a little bit tough to pay for that price tag. But the dude has played really well. I mean, especially the last 2 weeks. He dropped 30 last week against Philly. He dropped 25 against Cleveland. Now, of course, those were a little bit more easier to swallow match or price tags at 5 and 5,400. But I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick has played really well. Now you can always get that other opposite side of him where he throws 4 interceptions. Excuse me. But this matchup against the Jets, I'm not worried about that at all. They're a complete pass funnel defense. They're second in pass DVOA. They're in the 20s, or they're second in run DVOA, and they're in the 20s in pass DVOA. So I love playing Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. And it's crazy to say, but like this, the probably the nastiest stack. But like you can play Ryan Fitzpatrick and Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker is absolutely bald. Yeah. He's been wide receiver 1 this year, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then if you want to run it back, it's kind of a cheaper stack you can get to. And then the other one I think is definitely Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has played really well this year since coming in. He's at 5,800. Over the last 5 weeks too. I mean, he's really played, like I said, very well. And the deep ball pass is there for him. He has, over that same time span, he gives you the rushing floor that you're looking for a lot of times. And I just had that up. Anyway, okay, so if you go look at it, his numbers, and over the last really 4 or 5 weeks, you've gotten 38, 37, 40 rushing yards from him. 13 last week wasn't as good with only 5, but he has 3 rushing touchdowns. He has at least 2 touchdowns in every game but one since week 8. He's giving you at least, he's giving you that 16 to 20. He does have a ceiling of 32, which he did against Jacksonville. Excuse me. The only issue I would have is because we know that they want to run the ball. They are not a pass-first offense, and so that is a little scary playing Oakland. But this is on the road, so I do think you're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. And if they do, then I think 5,800 Ryan Tannehill is going to be one of my favorite plays on the entire slate, because I think that the upside's there. Now, the tough part is trying to figure out who you want to pair him with. I think A.J. Brown makes the most logical sense, but I think you could make a case for Corey Davis, but I think it would be A.J. Brown, or just play him naked. And so, like I said, 5,800 against Oakland, great matchup. That's defense that can certainly be beat. I think that is probably where I'll go. And the other one, if you really want to get down there, I think Gardner Minshew going against the Chargers at 5,400 is at least intriguing.
Yeah, no, Nick Foles, I mean, Jacksonville's just so dead to me right now. Nick Foles, 1 point, played him in cash last week, and friend of the podcast, Ben Cummins, actually cashed with Nick Foles as his quarterback last week. So that was pretty incredible. Chiefs D, D.D. Westbrook, as well as McCaffrey. So shout out to him. But yeah, we'll talk about it at running back, but I'm leaning the Fournette side of this game. But I think in GPPs, it does make sense. And Minshew Mania is back. They're going against the Chargers. So I definitely don't mind that at all at that price tag. Yeah, Kev, you hit on Deshaun Watson, which I think is, a great spot to kind of get him. I think it's a buy low spot for him. He's only 6,500, comes in really nice there. The run game for the Houston Texans has really, like, where's Carlos Hyde been? Duke Johnson's been out there and he's been all right, but he's not somebody you're going to lean in and week out. So the offense really kind of funnels through him. In Denver, throwing out Drew Lock there this week on the road. That should definitely be an interesting game. Deshaun Watson is like the 8th or 9th, or no, I think he's the 11th, price quarterback on FanDuel, which is ridiculous. So I definitely love him over there a lot as well too. Real quickly, Kev, if you're planting your flag here, where would you think that you're going to be leaning on your heaviest exposure to the 3 guys at this early in the week?
It's going to be Cousins, Watson, and probably Tannehill for me. I think those are the three that right now that I'm really looking at. I still want to see how things plan out because I think like a Matt Ryan at 6,600, if we find out Julio Jones is back, and the other one would be Austin Hooper, who also returned to practice. If he gets all of his weapons back, at home, I have no problem with playing Matt Ryan at 6,600, who's probably not going to carry any ownership. And I know there's people that aren't really high on him. And, it's going to be fun because I think some of these plays, like a Pat Mahomes, for example, could be really low owned where nobody's going to want to play him. Pat Mahomes probably burned some people last week against Oakland where he only had 175 and a touch. And I think that really burned a lot of people. Now he's on the road going against New England where people are still afraid of that, a little bit afraid of that defense, especially in Foxborough. And I don't think, a lot of people are going to want to play him. And I think he's going to be probably about as lowest owned as you could probably get him at in the spot. And I think that's a mistake. I wouldn't go heavy on him because I just think there's a lot of different ways this game could go. But, I would definitely want some exposure because he's certainly somebody that can break this entire slate. And then, like I said, so like for me, like right now, it's definitely Kirk Cousins, Watson, and Tannehill. But I've got to be monitoring some of these other situations with Matt Ryan, and there's guys like Jameis Winston and Darnold and Fitzpatrick, like all those guys. I could see people wanting to play and would understand playing them because I think they all have you can make a case for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it comes down to oh my God, where was I? Sam Darnold for me, definitely, and then Kyle Allen. Those are my two favorites just because I love the pieces around them. I'm gonna try and see what I can do to play around with some Delvin Hodges there at 5,900, which looks gross, but
talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Like I can understand playing Delvin Hodges if he was 5K or 4,800, something like that.
Right.
But he's 5,900. Like he's the same price as Drew fucking Brees, and he's $100 cheaper than Ryan Fitzpatrick, and $100 cheaper than Arnold.
He'll have no ownership.
I get that, and I get the matchup, but I just don't think he has a ceiling. Like, what is his ceiling? Is it 10? Is it 15?
I don't think we know that. We don't really know that.
Like we could say, like, oh, he hasn't been like a great matchup. Now, I guess it's somewhat tough because I think when he came in relief in Cincinnati, but like even in Cincinnati, he went 5 for 11 for 118 yards and a touchdown. He scored 8 points, right? And the thing is, like, he was an athletic quarterback that could use his legs. We haven't seen that at all. They're not using him in that way. And also, I think James Conner has a pretty good shot at being back this week. And if Connor's back, like, I think they're just going to run the shit out of the ball and lean on their defense. Like, I don't think you're going to see Delvin unless they fall behind, which would be somewhat exciting against Arizona. I don't know. Like, so, like, I feel like I said, if he was much cheaper, if he was down here in the David Blau, Drew Lock, Derek Carr, range, then that makes some sense. But when you're talking, I mean, he's up there with, some of the best plays on the slate. And so, like, I don't know. I just think that's tough. Like, who are you pairing him with? I guess you hope with Juju's back.
Yeah, I mean, if Juju's back, he'll be cheap. I mean, if you got Deontay Johnson out there, Vance McDonald flow chart, there's ways to pair him where you're not spending a lot of salary. He'll be low owned. And there's so much variance at the quarterback position. That's why I wanted to bring him up, because it is such a good spot on paper. And it's the other side. Like, we're not talking about him going against Buffalo on the road or going against, New England on the road. Like, this is Arizona on the road. And Arizona has played in some pretty high scoring games. I mean, even against good defenses, you look at these San Fran games, like 26-36, they lost, 25-28, they lost. 9-31 against New Orleans, but like and 20-38 against Carolina, 7-34 last week. So they weren't putting up points, but the Rams were. So like, if from a tournament standpoint, I'm just saying, what can I build around a Delvin Hodges team where he's not going to be low owned at all? And if we do get a Vance McDonald type of Tyler Higbee game, as we saw last week, and I can pair him with him, and maybe Juju comes back, then yeah, I'm gonna look to see what I can do with that. I'm not gonna start my builds there, but I definitely think it's an interesting spot to just bring up with the way Pittsburgh's been playing and the way that Arizona can run it back on the other side. with Kyler Murray out there. But I mean, I just wanted to bring it up because of the matchup. I want to play around with it and see where I land up. But again, this is early, just first look, and I looked at that matchup, and that was nice. Another one who has a good matchup, real quick before we move on from the position, unless there's something else you want to talk about, is Jacoby Brissett, Kev. And Brissett has another. We'll talk about Zach Pascal later on and Jack Doyle later on, but he, it's really hard to kind of determine what he's going to do, but the run game is pretty much, without Marlon Mack, it's up in the air. Jonathan Williams was nowhere to be found last week against Tennessee, and now they're going against Tampa Bay, which is a stout run defense and a pass funnel. So I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett and seeing, okay, you threw for 319 against Tennessee last week in week 13, only one touchdown. You only have two in your past 5 games, 2 touchdowns in your past 5 games. But can we go back and remember the Houston game where you put up 31, 4 touchdowns for 300 yards? Is there some way that Tampa Bay can put up points here, or the game's competitive and they need to throw and Jacoby Brissett can get there? And as I'm doing my builds, I'm falling on these guys that I do like in Indy. And so I think I'll have to find myself trying to get some exposure to Jacoby Brissett on the offhand, that the whole offense goes bananas from the passing game side. Are you interested in Brissett at all, Kev?
Again, like, I feel like that he's just he's too expensive at 6,100. I just feel like that there's just better plays around him. Even like a Baker at 6,300.
Is he good?
I think he plays. I don't see how he does. I know that he was limited. He doesn't really need to practice. I mean, I don't know. They said it's contusion, right? I don't know. I feel like he definitely plays. I can't see where that he doesn't play in this game. So, but like I said with Brissett, I would just find the extra 400 and play Watson, or extra 500 and play Ryan, or the extra 600 and play Cousins, or pay down from Brissett and play Darnold or Fitzpatrick, or Tannehill, or what have you, or Kyle Allen, whatever. Like, I just think these guys are just, not that it's a terrible matchup for Brissett, but it's one of the better on the slate, actually, I should say. But I just don't know what his ceiling is. Like, if you go back and look, he's had one game where he scored the 31 against Houston. But I believe that was when T.Y. Hilton was active, which he's not. And now it sounds like T.Y. Hilton is out for the year. You have to go all the way back to earlier in the year. But lately, it's 17, 13, 16, 2, 10, it's just not looking good for Brissett. So while this match is a solid one, I just don't think this is one that I feel like you have to go there with all the other plays that we have on the slate. It'd be different if this was a week where we have a ton of bye weeks and everything else that's happening. I just don't think so. Yeah, I probably won't have much, but the couple other ones that I wanted to, was kind of interested in would be like, or not interested, but see what your thoughts are, would be like Jimmy Garoppolo, who is 5,600. What are your thoughts about him? And then, somebody like a Tom Brady, where are you at with those guys this week, where Brady's at 6,100 and then Garoppolo's at 600?
Yeah, I'll definitely have some Tom Brady exposure, especially coming off the game we just saw it, the comeback. It kind of is frustrating because I think he looks so kind of dead in the water that it would have lowered his ownership there if they didn't have that kind of whatever it was, 4-minute run or 4-minute drill where he's able to kind of salvage the day. But like you said, this is projected to be a high scoring game. It is still Tom Brady. There are still pieces to be had there. So for GPP perspective, I love it. I love that it's the later game, and especially for Pat Mahomes too, because I think you can definitely run Pat Mahomes naked or stack him with somebody. And Brady, I love being able to stack him with a guy like James White and just taking the two of them and not even trying to get to Edelman or Sanu or Dorsett or any of these guys, because Myers is out there running routes. Harry's out there running routes. Ben Watson's healthy. Like, I just don't think there's anybody that you can trust in the wide receiver game right now outside of Edelman. But that makes it that much more of an appealing and compelling GPP play to me. For Garoppolo, let's see who's out there. If we get Kittle out there and the receiving core is healthy, then I could definitely be interested in it for this price tag in the Superdome. But outside of that, I mean, I think that these two teams try to play to their defensive strengths, and I just don't. And I mean, unless New Orleans gets up heavy here, like I don't really know if he'll hit. And I'm very rarely ever targeting the San Fran passing game. Like in situations where I want to target San Fran, like I'm playing the Tevin Colemans, the Breidas, the Mosterts of the world, because they just are so run heavy. Like even when it comes to the red zone, that's what they want to do. It's not going to be a matchup for them to do that. But I think this could probably be a lower scoring game than most people are projecting, just because how the defenses are playing right now.
Right. So, I mean, the Saints are also a pretty heavy, are pretty decent at. So they've allowed the 10th most points to the quarterback position, but they've been almost elite against the run. So, with it being in New Orleans and everything else, like I think there is some intrigue here with Jimmy Garoppolo, where you could pair him with a George Kittle or Deebo Samuel, who's also played very well for them. So I'll probably I'd like to have a little bit of look at him, maybe play him in some lower tier stuff, but I won't go crazy with him. The thing with Tom Brady is that, like I said, that offense. And I know, like again, people are gonna say, "Well, yeah, he threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Texans." Well, it was most of it came all in garbage time. He looks lost, throwing multiple interceptions, passes that you just wouldn't typically see him do. But this has been something we've seen all year from him. And right now, like the problem is that they just don't have anybody outside of Edelman. So teams are just double and triple teaming him and saying, okay, you're not going to do anything else. You don't have a tight end. You're not going to do anything else. And then the Texans did something really smart last week, which was putting a corner on James White instead of pairing him against a linebacker, because just nobody's afraid of their weapons. And the thing is, too, like the Chiefs' defense has become more and more as these years have gone on, is they've started pressuring more, and they're going to bring the house against New England, and they're going to say you're going to have to throw the ball to beat us, and that's and so like I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this is another game that we've seen from the Chiefs and Andy Reid where they just beat the shit out of the Patriots, because I think there's a lot of different things that go into this, and
Foxborough.
Not, yeah, we've seen it before.
I'm not.
But I'm just saying. So we'll see what happens. I just don't love Tom Brady. I don't think he has much of an upside unless they do get down by a lot. And they have to because, like I said, all that came in garbage time. Other than that, if you look at this 11, 8, 14, 18, 12, you have to get all the way back to week 6. Where when he actually was a competent quarterback. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see them break out of this, figure something out in this, but I'm not confident.
I mean, like I said, I think the way to unlock the Brady upside, if you're going to try and get there in GPPs, is by saying, how can I try not to pick one of these receivers, because it's just so hard to do so. We had that a couple weeks ago when everybody thought it was Mohamed Sanu week, but it's Tom Brady. And then if you can get into some James White exposure, I love that stack. The Patriots are, let's look at reverse DVOA here, Kev. Like the Patriots are 8th DVOA, 14th DVOA, but 8th in yards per pass. The Chiefs are 3rd DVOA in pass offense with 3rd yards per pass. So there is definite upside to taking this, and especially if you're saying that Mahomes goes out there and does what Watson did and kind of just get some points up on this defense that really, I don't want to say lost their way, but just has looked beatable. And then Brady, leading back the run, like when they get down, Sony Michel is nowhere near the field. Bolden nowhere near the field. They're getting James White out there and they're using Rex Burkhead. So I do think there's definite upside to that play. It's not a core play that I would get, but if you're telling me I'm building a 20 max team and having 10% of Tom Brady, I definitely wouldn't mind that at all. Let's tackle running backs here and keep the pod rolling. We got Christian McCaffrey, and oh my God, he's finally seen a price decrease of $200 down to 10-3 now, as he only put up 17 DK points, only 17. So didn't see the end zone. Really a pedestrian game for him. He really wasn't needed all that much. The game kind of relied on Kyle Allen to hit for DJ Moore, hit Curtis Samuel. So he wasn't able to put his upside game up, but now he's 10-3. He's always in play. I'm not going to say that he's not. I just haven't found my way into trying to jam him into builds, I should say. So the three running backs for me, Kev, that I really like, and I touched on it already. You got James White, and I'm trying to find his price here. I know he's down there. Yeah, James White at 5,500. I mean, it's going to be a competitive game from my perspective. That's a game throw that I'm predicting. Love that he got a season high of 14 attempts. We haven't seen him hit double digits on the ground in carries, so that was nice to see. And then you see what he can do: 11 targets, 8 catches, 98 yards, 37 points. He ended up being the highest scoring running back on the slate. And James White just has a role. I think he's the best play on New England, price considered, to take in this matchup. And especially at that price, like, he should definitely be priced a couple $100 more. He's not. So James White is definitely the way that I'm finding to get my exposure to that game. Right behind him, we got Devonta Freeman. I talked about him on the Thanksgiving pod. He came out, got 21 touches in his first game back there, only put up 51 yards. But again, this was a New Orleans defense that isn't really stout. He did get double-digit DK points. He goes against Carolina now, who's very susceptible to the run and on the ground. So at 5,400, I think that's a misprice for him, and I definitely like getting exposure to him on teams where I have that Carolina stack, as I was talking about. And then Leonard Fournette. So Leonard Fournette being back with Gardner Minshew, I tried to go back and look at the stats, and there's nothing really that stands out outside of the carries, Kev. So he only had this over 15 carries when he was in that Tennessee game, which was pretty crazy because they actually leaned on him in the passing game to get back in it. He put up 36 DraftKings points, but had 24 carries in that game. And then, with Nick Foles coming back in the realm, only 8 and 14. And with Minshew there, they were really trying to get him established and utilize him a lot on the ground while still giving him, anywhere from 3 to 6 targets. So Leonard Fournette going against the Chargers, I just feel like this is such a good spot for him. We know the touches are going to be there. The definite upside is going to be there as the Chargers have not shown that they can really stop or keep up with anybody. Kind of middle of the pack there when it comes to yards allowed. But they've allowed, 9 touchdowns on the position, to the position. Carolina, just to talk about Devonta Freeman, Carolina's allowed 19. So the touchdown equity and upside there could be real good for him. But the Chargers allowing 27 DK points to the position. I just love that play. And he's only 7,800, which is not too cheap. I really do, Kev, want to get your opinion. He's questionable. Dalvin Cook, obviously, in a good spot, too, going against Detroit. Detroit's been smashed on the ground all year. So I think he's definitely in play, too. But I'll probably be trying to, maybe pay up for more upside at receiver this week than for running back. But Derrick Henry, Kev, as I toss it over to you, he's been phenomenal. I mean, just absolutely, like, you have to have him in GPP winning lineups with the production he's given you. 27 points last week against Indy, 32 against Jacksonville, 36 against KC, 24 against Carolina. But his price tag was, 5,700, 6,400, 69.76. Now he's up to 8.2 on DraftKings. And this is not a guy who catches passes. He's just been obliterating defenses and taking out big runs. But Oakland's still a pretty decent matchup for him. But at 8,200, I just don't know if I can get there with Fournette just only $400 cheaper. So I do think it is a question you have to ask yourself, is Derrick Henry worth getting to? Or are there plays around him that just make a ton more sense that will offer way more upside than Henry can give you? So I want to get your thoughts on that, and then talk to me about your favorite plays at the running back position.
It's tough, right? Because 8,200 is a lot to ask for a player who doesn't catch passes. So, the upside's certainly there. Oakland is not good against the run. I mean, that they can certainly get on top of that. But that price tag, I think it makes it pretty risky. Like I said, I typically want to play. I typically want to play running backs who have pass catching upside, and I just don't know if Derrick Henry has that. I mean, basically, you're seeing 2 to 3 targets for him every single game.
Right.
Game script, but yeah, I mean, he's somebody that can go out and rush for 150 and 4 touchdowns. Like it's in the range of possibility for him. So will I have some exposure? Maybe a little bit, but it's not going to be as much. And I think he's going to be pretty popular, and especially as a pivot off of like a Dalvin Cook or the Christian McCaffreys of the world. But I just really wouldn't want to do it. I just think that price tag is a little bit too much. We don't have to talk about Christian McCaffrey at 10-3. It's not. He's Christian McCaffrey. We don't have Dalvin Cook. Like, I'm not concerned with this injury at all. If we were, it'd be a free square Alexander Madison week, but we're just not going to get that. I think he's perfectly fine. So unless the Minnesota gets up early and establishes himself and gets a big lead, then I think that maybe he doesn't get the most opportunities you think. But I think with Dalvin Cook at 9,500, I mean, he's a fantastic play. But for the guys that I'm really going to have the most of, I think Melvin Gordon against Jacksonville. Jacksonville has been so bad against the run, and Melvin Gordon, the opportunities are there for him. He had 20, 20 attempts last week. So his targets 3, 5, 1, and 4. So I think this is just a great spot for him. And I think this is a game that they can kind of control a little bit. I'm not really worried about Jacksonville getting out to some huge lead against them. Especially now with the Chargers defense kind of back at full strength with their 2 safeties returning with Derwin James and Phillips there in LA. So 6,400 Melvin Gordon is way too cheap, and I'll take that all day. I'll kind of start there with the running back position, because I think a lot of these guys. I would love to play Le'Veon Bell, for example, but Le'Veon Bell has been a train wreck at 7,200. Like, he's not worth it to me. Alvin Kamara, 7K. Alvin Kamara is pretty intriguing, but they're going up against one of the best pass defenses or best run defenses in the league, and a defense that is great against pass catching running backs as well. So it's really tough to play there. To play Alvin Kamara, even at that amazing price tag. You have Aaron Jones, who he's either going to break the slate or he's going to completely bury you. And he has that 40-point upside against Washington. Could he do it? Absolutely, he could. And at 6,700, it's not a crazy price to ask. But man, he's so volatile. He's 100% a GPP play, and one that I probably wouldn't have a ton of. Because last week was a great play, especially in the snow. You would have thought, they're going to run the ball. The snow, everything's going up. Nope. And then you have Jamal Williams.
I did.
Yeah. It's going to sit there and and get opportunities as well, and take that from you, which is what hurts you with like a Nick Chubb, right? Nick Chubb's in a fantastic spot this week against Cincinnati, home favorites against a terrible run defense, 8K, everything makes sense. But the problem is that Kareem Hunt is killing him right now and taking away value. And so, can you play Nick Chubb? Absolutely, but I wouldn't have a ton of them. So, like, what I'm getting at, there's a lot of these guys that just aren't really in great spots at the top of the list here. Like, it's Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook for sure, and you could probably make some case for Derrick Henry, though you're not going to expect much in the pass catching realm. And if they do fall behind in any way, Derrick Henry's dust. So at 8,200, that's a tough ask. So I think it's kind of a pay this middle of the road here, because I think Melvin Gordon, like I said, 6,400, love him, and then. Last week I was kind of off him, but now I think in a much better matchup for Devonta Freeman I don't think his ceiling is huge, but at 5,400, he doesn't need to have a huge ceiling. But if you look, I mean, 17 attempts and 5 targets last week against New Orleans, which is a fantastic run defense, pretty easy one to get to. And I think you can like him a little bit more even than a Phil Lindsay and guys like that. So I like Devonta Freeman. I think Darius Geis, again, I had a ton of Darius Geis. I was surprised how low he was. I do get the fact of, they were playing Carolina. Dude, like I said, Carolina has been fucking awful this year against running backs. And I was shocked at how little ownership. I actually got on him kind of late, but I had a ton of Darius Geis ownership last week, which really helped me out. And I think he's in a fantastic spot again at 4,900 against Green Bay, especially if they're trailing, because they also utilize them as the pass catching back. And so, like I said, I think Darius Geis at 4,900, I think is super interesting. I'm kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with, in San Francisco, because I do think Matt Breida is going to be back this week, which kind of kills what it maybe have been with Raheem Mostert at 4,600. But, and what would have been a terrible matchup. But I think if he was priced low enough, maybe there was some intrigue there. And then after that, the KC running back situation is going to be another one to kind of monitor here because of how often they use their running backs in the passing game. But right now you have LaShawn McCoy, who's 4,400. It doesn't sound like Damian Williams is going to play. I would be surprised if he does. Darrell Williams is definitely not going to play. And then from there, I think that there is – and so the other one would be Darwin Thompson, who's 4K. Now, they did sign Spencer Ware, but it sounds like today after Andy Reid spoke and said that it does not look promising that I don't know if Spencer Ware is even going to play this week because I guess he's not ready. And so if he's not active, and if they don't activate Elijah McGuire, who they have on their practice squad, then I think it's pretty narrow because I think then you could make a case for like a Darwin Thompson as long as he's not too it's going to really depend on what his ownership comes out to be if he becomes super chalk, because I don't want any part of that, because it just doesn't seem like they're willing to give LaShawn McCoy a huge workload. They're not looking to do that. They haven't done it all year. Really. And I just don't think it's going to happen. So if Damian Williams sits, who didn't practice today, so it doesn't sound like that's going to be an option. That's a pretty cheap price tag to ask for on a Kansas City defense or a Kansas City running back who can get you easily. I mean, at the very least, at 4K, 4,400 or 4K, can get you in that 12 to 15 range, which is something kind of you're looking for if you're paying down that far. Anything more than that, it's just like icing on top.
Yeah, no, that I definitely was wanting to hear what you were going to say on that KC situation there, Kev, because, I'm looking at LaShawn McCoy, and I've rarely played him this year at all. I think maybe on some of the showdown slates I've gotten exposure to him, but he's at least seen this New England team. I think this is something where, like, when we're talking about like guys like Frank Gore and guys who have been around just the block a little bit here, who have experience in these games that are going to be tough, that are going to be grinded out, that are going to be, all eyes on them in must-win games here. He's had some experience playing against New England when he was at Buffalo and being utilized in that passing game. He's still showing explosiveness out there in the backfield, and Mahomes has leaned on him. So if we get some of these guys out, I think LaShawn McCoy at this price tag, I definitely want exposure to that, and it will be hard to ignore. As you said, Kev, with them utilizing the pass catchers so much. And he has definite upside to pay off that price. I mean, that's really what you're looking for. Can he pay off that price tag of 4,400? And I think he can, you're talking about 3X if he gets 12 points there. I think he can definitely flirt with, 15, 18, maybe even 20 if he gets a score. So that's definitely compelling there. Real quick, some other guys, Kev, that I wanted to touch on. I mean, you talked about Kamara and 7K. I think he'll be at this stage in the week. I've seen touts talking about him already against San Fran, which is crazy to me. I get the price tag is favorable, but I just don't know he's still dealing with this lingering injury. I feel like it's a San Fran defense. It is at home. 7K does feel cheap, but my God, I mean, I just don't know how you can trust him right now. But that makes him a compelling tournament play, I guess. I wouldn't have him at all in cash games. Where was I at here? Yeah, Jamal Williams, you touched on. He's 4,800. He has a role. If Aaron Jones can't get there, you're hoping that maybe Jamal Williams could. I'd have some GPP exposure to him. And then, Kev, it's not a good matchup, but like, what are we doing with the Tampa Bay running back situation? So Peyton Barber comes in at 4,200. They're going against Indy. It's not all that great of a matchup, but he just went for 2 scores. Ronald Jones is benched because he apparently forgot how to pass block, and Bruce Arians has no patience for running backs that can't go out there and do that. So we get Peyton Barber here at 4,200 that could see more of a lion's share workload. You interested at all? Would you go down and play somebody like Patrick Laird at 4,100, who seems to have somewhat carved out a role for him with Kalen Ballage not being in the mix? Are you involved or interested with any of these guys here down at the bottom?
Oh, Patrick Laird. Remember we talked about him a couple weeks ago as kind of a, maybe a one-off.
Yeah.
Here we are, and he was just actually as bad on the ground as Kalen Ballage was. So I'm not sure if it's just their offensive line is just that atrocious, and they just cannot run block, because he was just as bad. The only upside with him is his involvement in the passing game, because last week he had 10 attempts for 5 rushing yards, so that was about as bad as it gets. But he did end up with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 43 yards and found the end zone, so he got you that 16.8. No, I don't think I can play him though.
Fair enough.
I think some people will. Like I said, the Jets defense against the run has been great. They're number 2 in run DVOA. It's just not a great matchup. Sure, I guess you could probably project him a little bit for some targets. Maybe he does end up seeing another 5 or 6 targets, and if he gets 40 yards and somehow finds the end zone, yeah, you could do it again. It's tough, and I probably wouldn't count on it. I just think there's other plays in the 4K range. Like we already talked about with Darius Geis at 49. I do think, honestly, I think Alexander Madison is in play. I think we've talked about it in other weeks, but he gets opportunities. Unless you think Detroit can stay and can push them or even get a lead in this game. Like I think there's at least some merit for Alexander Madison, even though it's not necessarily. Because I think this is a fantastic matchup with Dalvin Cook coming off the injury. It's going to be a short week. I do think Dalvin Cook starts, but if they're able to get ahead and build a lead, I think they pull Dalvin Cook immediately and say, "Get out of here. We're not going to risk you.
Yeah.
You're coming off a little bit of a stinger and an injury." And 4,500, no one's going to play Alexander Madison because Dalvin Cook's going to play. And I think that's an excellent leverage play off of Dalvin Cook. And I mean, he could end up getting in the entire second half to himself, and he already gets opportunities, throughout the game anyways, and he is like Dalvin Cook clone over here. And so 4,500, I wouldn't go crazy with it. I wouldn't have a ton. I would be smart with that and maybe only play him in a couple one-offs or something like that. But I do think Alexander Madison at least is an interesting play in this 4K range. I can't play a Tampa Bay running back. It's way too hit or miss. Last week looked like a great matchup to play a Tampa Bay running back. And, I guess if you decide to play Peyton Barber, I guess it would have worked out. But they're just too much into the hot hand, and I just can't play one of them. So for me, like, I would rather take a shot. And it is crazy now too. Actually, now I'm looking at this, that David Johnson is 4,200. Like,
no. Oh
so,
my God.
Like, just pour one for the homie. But yeah, I think the other one would either be, I think maybe you could make a case for possibly a Royce Freeman if you wanted to. I mean, it's not a strong case. He was limited due to a rib injury, but it's not like a great matchup. He's not getting as many opportunities, but he did see 4 targets last week, 5 attempts, but that's a complete dart throw play. But like I said, I think the one that I would really have the most interest in probably would be Darwin Thompson. because of the fact, like if you look at LaShawn McCoy, like we were talking about that, LaShawn McCoy hasn't played over 50% of the snaps since week 6. Like it's 41, 32, 11, 41, 43. And then he had the 54 against Houston, and 24, 46, 38, 36, 16%. Like he's not playing like the lion's share. And right now, what could end up happening and what we may see is either because it doesn't sound like Spencer Ware is going to be active. So if he's not, and Damian Williams and Darrell Williams, none of them are active, then what we're basically looking at is, like I said, I think it's going to be LaShawn McCoy and then Darwin Thompson for this week. But I could very well see them activate Elijah McGuire off their practice squad is somebody they signed, and they've really, really talked up last week once they brought him on their practice squad. They actually tried to sign him over the offseason, but he ended up choosing going to the Cleveland, and he was on their practice squad, and they ended up bringing him over here last week now. And so they really talked him up and talked about that Andy Reid said that he thinks that he's somebody that could have a future in this offense. Which was kind of surprising for someone to say that when they signed their practice squad. But we have seen some good things out of Elijah McGuire when he wasn't with the Jets. So that's another spot to monitor, because I would not if we find out that they activate Elijah McGuire. I know people are going to think because of what happened with Darwin Thompson. I don't think Andy Reid truly believes in Darwin Thompson because of some of the stuff that he said game. And we just haven't seen him get any opportunity. The only reason he played was because, one, Darrell Williams got hurt, and two, it was complete garbage time last week. But if they do run just the two backs, then yes, I would want some Darwin Thompson because he's going to get opportunities. Because, like I said, LaShawn McCoy just doesn't play that much. And so I do think then at that point, if they only run the two running backs, then I would want Darwin Thompson. Now, if Elijah McGuire is active, that's going to be a problem. And I don't know. I think that either one muddies the backfield too much to where you wouldn't want to play any of them, or even taking a shot on Elijah McGuire, who could get more opportunities than people think.
Yeah. Wow. That's your Kansas City insider here at the DJ Nation DFS podcast. It'll be something to monitor, Kev. So we definitely have to, keep that in mind, because these guys are just too cheap that if they're going to be utilized, or if we get word that they're going to be, out there and seeing run at any type of significant exposure, we'll definitely want to get there in some spots. Kev, let's toss it over to wide receiver here. And I think this is where we always have a lot of fun of talking about our plays. So before we get it, let's do an overall view of this position as well too, just because I think there's so many different ways you can go. But I want to talk about our favorite plays of the position. So for me, it starts as this. I think, my first favorite play, and I don't know if I'll have a lineup without him, Kev. That's how strongly I feel about him this week, is Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder has disappointed for 2 weeks now in a row against Cincinnati and Oakland. Seeing 13 total targets still, but just hasn't been connecting with Sam Darnold. I think this is the perfect get-right spot for him. He went for 983-1 against this team earlier in the year for 22 DraftKings points. Miami's given up the 6th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. They're giving up the 8th most DK points to the wide receiver position. But they've given up the most touchdowns as well. Jamison Crowder at this price tag can well pay it off. I think people are forgetting about him. He's my favorite one-off Jets play, and if I'm playing Sam Darnold, I'm going to have exposure to him. So I love him this week. I will have a ton of exposure to him. I really want to trust Devontae Parker, Kev. He's 6,900, which I think is just a troll by DraftKings to put him at that price tag. But the target shares is excellent. Fitzpatrick has loved him. It makes all the sense in the world to play Devontae Parker. In tournaments, though, I'm probably going to get to DJ Moore. DJ Moore has been leading receivers the past couple of weeks in air yards. has had 11 or more targets in the past 4 games, 10 or more in the past 5, 3 touchdowns in the past 2 games. Talk about somebody who's favoring a target. Kyle Allen leans on DJ Moore a lot. 7K, it feels a little too high with Curtis Samuel being only 4.9, but he's connecting with DJ Moore just so much more often that I think the equity is there. So it's really going to be tough for me to choose between those guys, but I think I'm leaning DJ Moore now. And then up at the top, if we get Julio is ruled in, I'm going to have stupid exposure to Julio in this matchup against Carolina. I mean, he's 7,500. The price is too cheap. It's Julio Jones. I want him out there going against James Bradbury, who hasn't been able to guard him and completely shut him down in every matchup that they faced in their career, with this being a divisional matchup. And I just think the ownership will be way low on him. That could definitely pay off there. We need the Julio Jones week. But if he doesn't go, it's Stephon Diggs in this matchup. The Lions and the Vikings both are giving up insane amounts of points here to the wide receiver position. So the Vikings are giving up the 5th most DK points to the position. The Lions are giving up the 6th most. So, and we just saw what they, Anthony Miller and A-Rob just burned them. They're giving up the 4th most yards to wide receiver position. It's the touchdowns that really have them, kind of salvaging and not moving up to the top. They've only given up 12 touchdowns on the year. That's good enough for middle of the road. So you're really hoping that Stephon Diggs can find the end zone here. But with no Adam Thielen, he's going to be peppered with targets in this matchup. There's just really I don't think that Slay can match up with him. But even if Thielen missed practice Wednesday, I don't think he'll play. If Thielen plays though, I think I'd be more interested in Diggs, even more so, because that should then lower his ownership for those people just wanting to get to Thielen. I think in this matchup that is still good with him battling injury. But those are the 3 I'm starting with, and then we can open up the forum there, Kev, to talk about some of these other plays. But I think that's where I'm starting at, and I want to see where your starting points are at.
So for me, I think it kind of – so starting at the top, Michael Thomas is definitely in plays and plays every single week. 8,300. He's not as expensive as he was. Tyreek, slate killer. He can either kill your lineup or he's going to he's going to just destroy it at 8,100. I know people are going to say, oh, well, they're going to try to take him away and double and triple team, which is certainly possible. And if that's what you believe, and if, like, in my opinion, if that is where things are leading you and you think that they're going to try to take Tyreek Hill away, and limit Travis Kelce, then I would be hammering McCole Hardman at 3,800. Because I think that is a fantastic spot. So if that's kind of where you're at, then McCole Hardman. So if you look at McCole Hardman, he played 44% of the snaps, 72%, 22, 32, and then 16 going all the way back. That was back whenever obviously the Green Bay and the Minnesota games were with what's his name? Matt Moore. Matt Moore. Yeah. Not with Patrick Mahomes. So I think that he's at least in play. He's somebody that they try to kind of get the ball in his hands in numerous different ways. And I think that they kind of maybe unleash him a little bit in this game. So 3,800, McCole Hardman is super interesting to me. So if you don't want to play Tyreek Hill, I would at least want some piece of this game and some piece of this offense. And I think getting some action on McCole Hardman is certainly a way to do that. Some of the other ones, I flip a coin on Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, really. I mean, Jesus, you never know which one's it's going to be, which one's going to get the most opportunities. Last week, neither one of them did a whole lot, but that was just a really weird game where, Jameis played a really great game, but they just never really needed to throw the ball for touchdowns. And they kept, lining up and, using the running back share I haven't seen. So, but I think that changes a little bit this week. So I'm a little bit more right now on Chris Godwin than I am Mike Evans, but I think you could go either way. I mean, they're 73 and 7,200, so we'll see on that one. But, moving down from there, DJ Moore is in an elite spot at 7K. Devontae Parker, you mentioned, he is 6th in weighted opportunity rating over the last 4 weeks and 3rd in total air yards, where, you could say the same for DJ Moore, who's actually number 1 in air yards over the last 4 games. His 47 targets, is most over that span as well. So there's a lot to like about DJ Moore. DJ Moore has really kind of balled all year, but earlier in the year, people weren't as high on him because of the fact that he really wasn't finding the end zone. But like I said, over the past 4 weeks, he does have those 3 touchdowns. So he's starting to see some positive regression in that department as well. So I love DJ Moore. Whether you want to stack him with Kyle Allen or you just want to play him by himself, I think having a lot of exposure to DJ Moore is certainly a way to go. Devontae Parker, it's weird. You almost feel gross every time you play him, because it's for years we kind of buried this dude, but he really has been solid this year. He does not have you have to go all the way back to week 3 to find a week where he hit under double-digit fantasy points, right? And I mean, he's been pretty consistent. 34 last week, which was his biggest game of the year. That's the one concern, I guess, with his price tag is he just going to give you the 15 to 18 points, because that's kind of where his range has been, other than this last week. And then week 11, he got 20.5, because those are only 2 games that he had over 100. Now, some of those games, it's kind of tough to monitor, because he also was playing with Josh Rosen in some of those games and everything else. But I mean, especially since Preston Williams has been out, I mean, the dude has 10 targets, 11 targets, 10 targets. With that kind of level of volume, you have to play Devontae Parker, even though it feels a little bit dirty doing it. And then from there, we kind of talk about it, right? Minnesota, right, has Marvin Jones has made Minnesota his bitch, right? I mean, he really has. He has fucking crushed Minnesota. Do you have any interest in him at 5,400? Way too cheap.
I mean, relatively speaking, Kev, he has. I mean, he had the 4 touchdown game this year, earlier this year. He's had a 2 touchdown game against them, and then he's had some middle of the road games. I wouldn't say crushed it, but definitely some of his highest upside games in his career have come against this team. I definitely have upside, or I definitely have interest with him because of his upside. At 5,400, I mean, that's enticing. That's definitely nice. Whoever the quarterback is out there, I think you definitely want to have exposure to him. I think people will try and get to Kenny Golladay, and both of us, I feel love Kenny Golladay, but Kenny Golladay is going to hit when he gets those bombs, as he opened up the game with against Chicago on Thanksgiving. He had the 75-yarder, and yeah, he did. He's still getting another 75 yards there. But without the touchdown, it's 75 yards on 3 catches. That 170-yard bomb for the touchdown really put him into that elite status there, where he's getting, 28, 30-point upside. Marvin Jones is just always around. And honestly, in that game, Kev, if we go back and look at it, he had a ton of red zone targets in that game. I believe he had 3 that I can recall just off the top of my memory watching that game. 2 in the first half where he was missed and they weren't able to convert with him. And then another one, I believe, in the second half. So, that's definitely a compelling reminder for me in wanting to play Marvin Jones this week at that price tag, if he's going to get the looks there with, TJ Hawkinson not really being around, Amendola not being a thing. It's really, who do you pick between between Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones? And I'll take the lower price guy.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Marvin Jones this week. I think that he's in a great spot, especially at 5,400. That is a great price tag for him, and kind of get some opportunity there with him. Some of the other ones.
Oh, I was going to say, Kevin, and he should see Xavier Rhodes, right? And Xavier Rhodes has been not the Xavier Rhodes that we're used to talking about in this matchup.
No, yeah, Xavier Rhodes has been a complete dumpster fire this year. So, yeah. So, some of the other ones I think, with Andy Dalton back again and playing again this week, 5,900 Tyler Boyd, Zach Pascal against Tampa Bay, elite matchup. I like him, especially with no T.Y. Hilton. And then, like I already mentioned, Deebo Samuel. I think you can, if you want to get a little cute and play some of him, I think you could do that at 5,600 to kind of move him all over the field. And then some of the other ones that I really like, Robbie Anderson, 5,100. Just a pure tournament play.
Been talking about him every week, Kev. You've been talking about him every week.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the weeks he paid off. Actually, the last 2 weeks. I mean, what am I talking about? I mean, last week he had 20, and then the week before he had 18.6. So, I mean, I wouldn't be mad about that at 4,800.
No. I'm just saying. I know.
I'm just riding the train. I'm riding the Robbie Anderson train. And
jump up on it.
Choo choo.
Oh my god.
So a good leverage play I think is Curtis Samuel at 4,900. A good leverage spot off of DJ Moore if you don't want to play him and you need a spot down here and if you have 5K remaining, Curtis Samuel will probably be the first guy I get to. And then past that, I just think most of them would be pure dart throws. Alan Lazard last week, who kind of had a pretty big game in that game against the Giants. He's somewhat interesting at 4,200. He kind of has emerged as the number 2 wide receiver in that offense.
Yeah.
And Auden Tate, I think, is always available or always a decent play against the against the Browns. Like I said, I think it's just a boost to the offense with Andy Dalton back. And then you kind of just get down to, like I said, McCole Hardman is interesting. Kenny Stills, all those type of plays. I think down here in the sub 4K range, if you're wanting to, kind of punt the position, I think those guys. And then last one, I don't think I mentioned, I passed him, was Will Fuller. I like him a lot too in this spot. He's questionable right now, but I definitely think he's played. He was limited. I don't think there's anything to really worry about there. But I think Will Fuller back in this offense, I think, is also a fantastic spot.
Yeah, Will Fuller, 5,500. My goodness. I mean, has a touchdown called back. It's just so frustrating on that showdown slate there against New England. Really would have helped me out in some lineups, but 5,500 for Will Fuller. This was a guy, Will Fuller, who you just played him because he was 100 yards or a touchdown guaranteed every week with the first couple of games with Deshaun Watson. And because of the injury between the two of them, I feel like that's kind of gone to the wayside. But he definitely, even with Kenny Stills being there, he definitely has a role in this offense solidified. And I really, 5,500 is just too cheap for a guy like him who can put up, 35, 40 points on a given week because of the air yards that he's able to see. Kev, before we move on to the tight end position, I wanted to touch on a couple things here before we move on. It looks like we're getting John Ross back for Cincinnati. So he's going to be playing for his first game. It would be his first game since week 4. And he started off the year extremely strong, was looking like a great option, whether that be in redraft or DFS purposes because he was so cheap. He's coming now into the mix. And if this was Ryan Finley, I might not even think about bringing it up. But because we got Andy Dalton back at the helm, with John Ross being back at 4,400. And again, I want to talk about or not again, but I want to bring up Cody, your guy who you guys do the Fantasy Authority podcast with. Cody was bringing up dart throws and what we think about them and what makes for a viable one. Are we looking for volume? Are we looking for upside? Is floor a matter of consideration? And John Ross is a guy where I'm not thinking about floor at all. I'm looking at the situation. If Auden Tate's banged up, if Andy Dalton's the quarterback here, if I can find any rhyme or reason to get this dude in the lineup who has, GPP winning upside, I'm going to go there. So Are you interested in a guy like John Ross at all, Kev, coming back from the shoulder injury and playing this week against the Browns?
The upside, I think, is certainly there because he's somebody that has game-breaking abilities and it has a home run speed. But it's tough to trust somebody coming off an injury. 4,400 is not it's not a terrible price tag by any means. I'll tell you what, like, it feels like it was almost it just feels like it was last year whenever he did all this, right? Like, it doesn't feel like he had a 37-point week and a 24-point week the first 2 weeks of the season. I don't know. It just seems like it was so long ago. It's like did that really happen? But yeah, I mean, he was in the midst of kind of a pseudo breakout to start the year, and then he got hurt. So yeah, I mean, I think if you wanted to play him at 4,400, you could. He again a pure GPP play, somebody that you would only look to play in tournaments, and I wouldn't have a ton of exposure to him. Maybe a 5% play, 10% play, depending on how many lineups you're playing. If you're only playing 10 lineups or less, I wouldn't even probably consider it at all. But again, he's somebody that can house call a 60-yard touchdown.
For sure. I'm interested in him. I would definitely, again, with those dart throws too, I also want to look at ownership. How high owned are they going to be? If he goes under the radar, and it seems like everything's going well through practice throughout the week, I could see myself finding some exposure to him because of that upside. Kev, I got your boy out here on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube or anywhere where you can see video via Periscope or what have you. Christian Blake. So every wide receiver priced above him for Atlanta has a questionable tag tied to their name. So Julio's questionable, Ridley's questionable, Russell Gage is questionable. Christian Blake was a guy you brought up on the Thanksgiving podcast. He comes in at 3,300. If one or multiple of these guys miss, or if we get word that somebody's limited, Christian Blake exposure, where are you coming in at?
Well, first, we can just talk about the fact that I remember whenever I brought up Christian Blake on that podcast.
Yeah, we ain't talking about that. We just want to know how much
it's over. Oh my gosh, Christian Blake.
Yeah.
You find play at not minimum 3K. He didn't break the slate, but I think he ended up with 11 or 13, something like that. Not bad for a 3K player. But
no, he definitely it not only broke the slate, but you were, that helped you out in some GPPs because of how low owned he was. Those 11 points have definitely paid off with some, Michael Thomas didn't really get there. Calvin Ridley didn't really get to that spot. So depending on how you built your teams, you definitely were feeling pretty great with some Christian Blake in your life.
Yeah, 9 targets, but he's 18 targets the last 2 weeks. But and he honestly, I think he could end up being the wide receiver 3 for them, possibly depending on what happens with some of these other guys. We're gonna have to monitor what happens with Julio. It sounds like they're saying that he's trending in the right direction. He's been limited this week, but that's all he really needs to be anyway for him to play. He doesn't really so. I think there's a pretty good chance Julio does play, which then I think makes Christian Blake probably irrelevant. But because I also think there's a chance with Austin Hooper as well to be back. So I couldn't do it unless we get word that some of these guys are ruled out. And if you get some guys that are ruled out and Julio's ruled out again, even if really to me, if just Julio's ruled out, I think that does open the door for Christian Blake again at 3,300. So yeah, I think you could do that. What are your thoughts about Tim Patrick?
Tim Blake.
Yeah. It's tough now because that first game that he played this year, he had the 8 targets, but then the last 2 weeks, the offense really hasn't been good. They only scored 3 points, lost big time to Buffalo, which was a terrible matchup. He had 3 targets, and last week he only had 2. That was a home game where they kind of controlled a little bit against LA. This game is a game where I feel like they're going to have to throw the ball a lot because they're probably going to be behind. Would you have any interest in a Tim Patrick, or is that just way too thin for you?
Yeah, it's too thin for me. I would have loved it if we kind of got the target share that we were looking for with Drew Lock being there at quarterback. Because these are coming with Allen at the quarterback position there for Denver, and he really was not even on Drew Lock's radar last week. So it's thin for me. I'd be willing to pay the what is his price? $6,400 price tag. I wouldn't do it in one-offs, but in game stacks, if you're targeting the Houston side and want to get there, Cortland Sutton on the other side there, I think it's just way more the upside, safer play any way that you want to dice it. Is what I would get to. I just can't play Tim Patrick. Kev, before we move on to tight ends real quick, I just want to get your opinion here. You did talk about Deebo Samuel. You talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Deebo Samuel, let's just hypothetically, I think he'll be hold on, where did I have it here? I want to pull it up. Basically, I'm alluding to, I want to get your opinion on who wide receiver that I want to target. I think Marshawn Lattimore is going to be the guy who will see either Deebo or Emmanuel Sanders. So if PJ Williams is on a guy like Kendrick Bourne, he's coming in at under 4K. He's 3,700. He should be in a pretty decent spot here. What say you on a guy like Kendrick Bourne, who is pretty much the only other target from a wide receiver standpoint on this team? He ran 15 routes last week, which was right behind Deebo and Emmanuel Sanders, who were both at 20, running out of the slot there to get his exposure. Dante Pettis and Richie James have not been anywhere near the field or any type of exposure there. So Kendrick Bourne at 3,700, I feel like I could definitely get exposure to him as a dart throw in a favorable matchup going against PJ Williams, if that's who's guarding him, and then a favorable game matchup just in general.
I don't hate it. I don't love it either, but yeah, I mean, if you wanted to play him, I think that's an area you could go to. Two more that I think are interesting that I as I'm sitting here looking at this. One, I kind of talked about McCall Hardman, and I think that he's the one I would probably rather go with. If you wanted to go with if you're building a lineup and you absolutely love the lineup, and you only have $3,400 left. Mm-hmm. Fitting in a Demarcus Robinson isn't crazy either. I mean, if you go back last week, certainly wasn't it, but before last week in a game where they kind of blew everybody out. I mean, Demarcus Robinson played 57% of the snaps against the Chargers, 61% against Tennessee, only 26 against Minnesota, but then 66, 78, 84. While he has been trending down a little bit in terms of snap share, like he's still out there running routes and everything else. So at 3,300, Demarcus Robinson, he has that connection with Patrick Mahomes and everything else. So, if you're looking for a dart throw, like Demarcus Robinson might be one of them. And the other one that I'm going to have not a ton of interest in, but if I had to play a wide receiver that was $3,500 and above, it would be Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell practiced in full today, and after coming off a hand injury, but they're getting the Bucks this week. We've talked about how great that matchup is. $3,200 for Paris Campbell. I really like this matchup. The last game that he played, he went 5 for 53. He ended up leaving early against Pittsburgh, but we've seen some upside from him a little bit this year, and I think that now without no T.Y. Hilton, they're limited in opportunities or with explosive players and stuff like this, and a matchup against Tampa, who's absolutely horrendous against the pass. I think a Paris Campbell, who, like I said, back in practice full, $3,200. I like some Paris Campbell.
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. It's a good matchup for the Indy wide receivers. So I don't hate that call at all. Just was looking at the routes that Demarcus Robinson was running, and yeah, he's right behind Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins when it comes to running routes on the field. Nobody else is really getting there with Pat Mahomes being back, Pringle kind of being nothing. So a very interesting play there for somebody that did not catch a target or see a target catch a pass in last game. Kev, let's move on to the tight end position as we get ready to wrap up the pod here. We got tight end and defense left. And real quick, let's just hit on some of these plays. So tight end always feels a little bit thin than most of the other positions. We got, guys going on IR, guys who are ending up questionable. Really, just not too many spots that are really great. For me, it really starts with Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle was a guy we talked about last week. He was 3,300 only going against Tennessee. Saw season high 11 targets with Eric Ebron going to IR, 6 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. Really looked like he would be a better play to kind of start off instead of the chalk Tyler Higbee. But Tyler Higbee ended up, smashing and putting up 26 or whatever the case may be. But this is another good spot for Jack Doyle. He's going against Tampa Bay. It's on the road. I love this spot for him. He's 4,600. It feels priced up because of how cheap he was last week. But again, no Eric Ebron. Yeah, Paris Campbell may be back, but again, no TY. So the second favorable matchup for a tight end on the slate. I just want to have so much exposure to Jack Doyle. 4th most points allowed to tight end is what Tampa Bay is doing. And then Jack Doyle saw 94% of the snap share and with going along with all those targets last week. So that definitely is compelling to me and where I want to start. Gesicki, Kev, he comes in at 4K. I still think he's quietly going under the radar. He's got double-digit DK games in the past couple of weeks. He, again, was priced a little bit lower than he comes in at for week 14, but 7 targets, 6 targets in the past 4 games. Then he had 3, 4, but then 7 again against Washington. Going against the Jets here, it seems like he's carved out himself a little bit of the role, a little bit of the security blanket there for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Back-to-back games with a touchdown. Jets, I'm not sure where they come in against the tight end position, but just because of the role that he has, it seems pretty compelling to me. They're honestly not. The Jets aren't really that bad against the tight end position, but with just the amount of exposure.
The last time they played, he had 6 for 95.
6 for 95. Okay, so I mean, basically, he might be the reason why the Jets are even remotely, bad at the position as they come with pretty good defense there. But I do like getting exposure to him. And then where was I going to go here? The other one was, and I can't find him now, but wherever Fells is at for Houston, he seems to be splitting time with Atkins, and I never know who it's going to be. But it seems like, from a touchdown standpoint, he's got 7 on the year, Kev, which is incredible. He's getting a lot of red zone looks. And if you're going to play Deshaun Watson in this game, going against Denver, I think he makes for a compelling stack option to go along with that. As I think a lot of people will, try and just target the wide receiver position from that realm. But I like getting to some Fells this week if I can make it work, or if I'm looking at complete game stacks there. So that's where I'm looking at tight end. Where are you at, Kevin, and what are you trying to get to? Oh, and Vance McDonald too, but I mean, it's the flow chart. It's not really the player. Whereas like Tyler Higbee, I felt like had more of an upside just with the amount we're seeing Jared Goff throw the ball. But it is still flow chart, so he has to be named.
First of all, it needs to be mentioned that pour one out for the boy Dan Arnold. He was released this week by the Saints, now winding back up on their practice squad if he goes unclaimed. But anyways, always got to give Dan Arnold a shout out. So for me, I think it's going to be pretty easy. One, it's really going to depend on what happens with Austin Hooper as well. He got in another limited practice today after last week kind of trending upward. It seems like he's starting to trend forward. And if he ends up as active, it's going to be hard not to play him. He's been one of the most steady tight ends we've seen all year, but there is always the possibility that he re-injures himself. So he's playing for a team that's not playing. So paying $6K for Austin Hooper, you'd hope that maybe he would have been priced down a little bit, but nope, no such thing here. So for me, I think where I'm really going to start is I do like Hunter Henry quite a bit at 5,100. I still think that is a good price tag for him. And then Jack Doyle, 4,600. I thought it was funny last week. A lot of people kind of were trying to talk themselves into why Jack Doyle wasn't a good play until, I heard some touts talk about it, and, it just didn't make any sense. I'm like, we're going to, like, if you just look at the splits without Ebron on the field, he had 11 targets last week and he was $3,300. Like, it was so easy to get the path to play him. So I'm going to have quite a bit, even still at 4,600 of Jack Doyle. Great matchup against Tampa Bay. I don't have to really elaborate more on the Vance McDonald call. 100% flow chart that we've seen Ross Dwelly go off on this team. So, if you don't want to play, if you want to play Vance McDonald, 100%, $4,300. I think that I like the Mike Gesicki call. He's running a ton of routes as well. 32, 34, 40. That's some elite usage there by a tight end. So he's become 1A or 1B to Devontae Parker's 1A in this offense in terms of targets. So I do like Mike Gesicki. I like that call at 4K. If you want to get a little weird, I think there's a spot you can do it. Because old man Greg Olsen got hit with a concussion last week. He has not practiced yet this week, did not practice today. And with this team pretty much eliminated from the playoffs, and I wouldn't, like I said, I think this might be Greg Olsen's last year. I think he may retire after this year. Ian Thomas is only $2,500. He's the nut minimum and a good matchup against Atlanta. I really like Ian Thomas at $2,500. I think everything aligns for him. Even last week, whenever Greg Olsen went out, he had 4 targets. So I don't know. In a week where right now there's not a lot of obvious value, I think paying down at tight end and paying a $2,500 Ian Thomas, who is familiar with the offense and is an explosive player, I think is certainly a spot that I'm going to go to.
Yeah, he's definitely in play at that price tag. And then Logan Thomas as well. People were asking about him. Just a matter of TJ Hawkinson going on IR, next man up. We haven't really seen the share there for targets, but he is going to be a backup. We do like when we can get guys who are practice squad or backups with the backup. So if David Blau is out there, then I think, maybe there's something that could be said for Logan Thomas at 2,600. I don't see myself getting there at all. Ian Thomas is a much better play, and I will have some Kyle Allen exposures. So I don't hate that at all, Kev. That's definitely a good call by you to bring him up. Lastly, before defense, any exposure to these guys at the top at all, you think, or are they too high priced that you'd have trouble getting there? Kev, you may be muted just in case, because I can't hear you.
I thought I hit the button, did not. So Kelsey is certainly always in play every single week. It's like we talked about, like he's kind of like a wide receiver, and at 6,200, like that is probably way too cheap for him. I'm not really that concerned with the New England matchup. So yeah, the targets are going to be there. 6,200 price tag. Last week he was 7,200. We've seen him in this kind of spot before. Where at this price tag, go back to week 11 where he was 6,200 against the Chargers, where he dropped 792 and a touchdown against the Chargers. So, you could definitely play him. Kittle, I don't really care about this matchup the matchup as long as he plays. 5,900, I think is too cheap for him as well. And then, like I said, I already talked about the Hunter Henrys, the Jack Doyles. I really like them and their spots they're in. So yeah, if it was me and I had to make a decision on one of these and I had the money to play one of them, price considered, I think it's Travis Kelce would be the clear cut favorite, and then Kittle would be coming shortly after that. And then if Hooper plays, I'll still have some consideration for him just because of how much. We saw even Jaden Graham, right? Who, with Matt Ryan last week had 4 for 40 and a touchdown. So, he loves the tight end. So Austin Hooper, even at $6K, which is super risky at that price tag. I just don't think I could do it coming off an injury. I just would hate to see him go out there, maybe get a couple plays or a couple routes, and then it just doesn't feel right and gets pulled off the field. And then, $6K for a tight end is pretty steep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been living in the 4K and under range for a tight end, so it'd be tough for me to get there outside of game and team stacks. So like if I'm playing Kelce, I'm probably playing Mahomes. If I'm playing a guy like Mark Andrews, I'm probably playing Lamar on the other side. And then other than that, I'm just trying to get to Jack Doyle and potentially some of these other guys. But Jack Doyle is the guy I'll be heaviest on. Kevin, let's get to defense as we wrap up the pod here. So with defense for me, it really comes down to two places. This is one where I haven't, even with the high, there's always one high price defense that I really like to get to, and I'm just not finding it this week, at least early on here. So maybe things will open up as the week goes on. But the two that it comes down to me is, and I can't believe I'll play them again, but Jacksonville, I really thought they were in a good spot there. They still ended up with 6, so I wasn't hurting from it, but 3,300, I wanted a little bit more out of 6. They allowed 28 points, excuse me, but really 22 is what they got counted against. Still were able to get 4 sacks against Jameis, no interceptions, but a fumble recovery. They go against the Chargers. Phillip Rivers, they said that he could be benched at any point. So I definitely, like hearing that if we're going to get the backup. And then the way they get pressure, I love it. And then the Colts defense for me, Kev, is the other one. They're going against Jameis. They're 24. So this is a way better price tag for me going against Tampa Bay than even Jacksonville was last week. And I played Jacksonville. So at 2,400, they just open up so much that you want to do. Put up 9 against Tennessee, 10 against Jacksonville a couple weeks back, 8 against Miami. They've really, have really been solid at this position. If they go out and get you 8, that's pretty much 4x on the position there at the defense. There's only 6 defenses priced lower than they are. So I love getting to the Colts this week and just logging out. Where are you at?
I have some. So for me, I think the Vikings at home, I like that at 3,800, but I probably will not be able to get up to that. For me, I think it's really going to be. So I think I'm going to run the Chargers at 2,800. I'm going to have some interest. I like that Colts call for sure. I think the Cardinals at 2,400 is certainly in play. And then the other one, I like the Chiefs at 2,200. Opportunistic defense. Tom Brady's, had some issues with turning the ball over lately. And, I think they're going to be bringing the house, like I said, against this. And I'm going to stand with this. And I said $2,200 KC. I have no problem with doing that.
Fair enough, Kev. That's how many homer calls are you going to make this podcast? But
I know, right? I'm trying to not to hide it. Maybe people that should definitely be pointed out is that I am a Chiefs fan, and so after but I don't know. I just think looking at this logically at $2,200, that's the 4th cheapest on the slate. I'm not afraid of this this New England defense, and. If you just go back and kind of look at even like the Cowboys a few weeks ago, whenever they were playing them, I think they ended up getting with I think they scored 9 in Foxborough, I think is what it was, 9-10, something like that, in Foxborough. Now, obviously, the weather conditions had something to do with that, but I'm just not really all that scared of this offense that the Patriots have. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Well, that is the wrap on the Week 14 DFS main slate for the DJ Nation podcast. we went through all the plays. It's early in the week for us, so a little bit long-winded than you guys might normally be used to, but it wouldn't be a DJ Nation podcast if we didn't go over 90 minutes. So before we leave you guys for week 14 and say our goodbyes, we got to get in this Millie lineup. Some people were asking us, Kev, how the Millie lineups were doing. We had some good heaters there right after we had Matt Dixon and Derek on from TQE, but and week what was last week? Week 13. So week 12 we did pretty decent as well. Week 13 we kind of struggled. Lineup was just a little bit too cute. So let's try and bounce back this week and see if we can hit that money line and even take down the Millie Maker or significant money here in the team. At the very least, let's try and pick some players that we think will get a team win as we get a share of that 50K pot this week in the Millie Maker. So, Kev, let's go ahead, build this team right now on DraftKings Millie Maker. We got 9 positions to go. I'm going to start it off. I haven't been starting off for the past couple of weeks. I'm just going to throw in Jamison Crowder at 5,300. That way I know that we get him. I love him this week. I said that I'll pretty much lock button him in, and I want to stand by that. So Jamison Crowder at 5,300 is where we're starting.
All right, then let's go ahead and just play Sam Darnold.
All right, so we're going Sam Darnold on the other side. So let's just see what we got right now. I'll play Devontae Parker for the run back and just kind of do that little mini team or mini game stack build off of that, see where we're at.
All right, then I'm going to play Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, my goodness. I don't think you've said Christian McCaffrey's name in 8 weeks. We've been doing this. Let's throw Jack Doyle in at 4,600. So right now we're looking at Sam Darnold, Christian McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder, Devontae Parker, run back with Jack Doyle at tight end, leaving us 4,225 per position. Running back, wide receiver, flex, defense.
So I'm going to play I'm going to go Darius Geis at 4,900.
Okay. So we have 4,000 left per wide receiver, flex, and defense still needed. So we'll go cheap at D. I already know that'll give us money to play around with. You know what? If we have the stack already, let's just go with it. See what we can do with Robbie Anderson at 5,100.
All right, well, since this is where we're at, I guess this is what we're going to do. I want to play Paris Campbell.
All right, I don't mind that actually, at all.
I think I know what I'm going to play. I'm going to play McCall Hardman at 38. You got to have some exposure to this KC game.
So Hardman at 38, which leaves us 31 for defense, which gets us Saints, Jags, Falcons, Dolphins. Let's go ahead with the Jags. I mean, the Chargers are trash. So the team we have right now, DFS, DJ Nation, Millie Maker, Week 14, Sam Darnold, Christian McCaffrey, Darius Geis, Jamison Crowder, Devontae Parker, Robbie Anderson, Jack Doyle, McCall Hardman, and Jaguars D, and no salary remaining. Kev, I think that might be the first or maybe only second build that we've done this year where we haven't left any money on the table, used up the whole salary. So I'm gonna go ahead and submit this in. We're rooting on the Dolphins and Jets game being a high scoring game stack there, and that's going to do it for the Week 14 podcast for the DGen Nation main slate here on DraftKings. We appreciate you guys joining us. As we said, always you can find the podcast on YouTube. You can find it on Periscope. You can go ahead and find it, go to the fantasyauthority.com. We're there. iTunes, we're there. Stitcher, we're there. We're trying to give you guys multiple avenues where you can download, listen back, and just have some fun with us. And as well, we want to get you guys in that free Slack chat if you aren't already. So DM Kevin at Fantasy Rat 13 or DM the DFS DGen Nation at DGen Nation Pod on Twitter, and we can definitely get you guys in there. You can DM me as well. I keep saying everybody else, you DM me too at Ryan Alexander _W on Twitter is where you can do that. We want to get you guys in the free Slack chat. Still talking redraft. I know a lot of people got their fantasy playoffs that are kicking off this week. If you want to, talk start sit, we got that for you. You want to talk dynasty, we got that for you. DFS, we got that for you. It's a good time over there. So hop in the free Slack chat. Kev, you got final words for the people before we sign off?
Yeah, I meant to say this at the beginning. Not too long of a rant here, but we got a little a review on the pod through iTunes this week, and it kind of pissed me off a little bit, to be honest with you, because I really don't care what people, if people are, obviously entitled to their own opinion, and I get that, but one of the things that stood out to me that I think really what it was more than anything was when it said something along the lines of that we argue too much. And I don't think it's an every week thing that we argue. I think it happens from time to time. But I'll be honest with you, I would much rather listen to a podcast where people are passionate about their takes or their opinion and willing to, kind of talk it out and hash it out than people that are sit around and fucking circle jerk the entire time, and where it's just like, I'm going to play this guy. And then the next guy goes, I'm going to play this guy. And there's no conversation about it. There's no argument. There's no nothing, because you don't get smarter from that one. I think it really trains your mindset, and I think it kind of allows you to look at things a little bit differently. So I would never want to listen to a podcast that does that ever. There's not exciting. There's no entertainment value to it. And then I think the people just that generally just agree the entire time, I just think is just terrible, right? And so people that are going to sit here, I want you to challenge me if I'm wrong and I have a bad take or I have a hot take or whatever it is. I want you to challenge me, and I want you to tell me why you disagree, because I think there's people that are going to disagree with what I think or disagree with what your opinion is on it. And to see the other side and to talk it through, I think is much more valuable than, like I said, just sitting around and doing a circle jerk the entire time. And so I don't know, that really that one part, I don't care what you say. You can tell me I'm a fucking moron. You can tell me I'm an idiot. You can tell me whatever you want. I don't care, right? I'm used to it, whatever. I'm a little bit more contrarian than most, and I'm fine with that. And sometimes that my player pool in the beginning is a little bit too much, and I understand all those things, and that's fine. But to say that when people try to give me a negative review because we're too passionate about it and because we're not just fucking people who sit around, and like I said, there's podcasts out there that do that. Literally, there's no conversation about it. It's just a simple one-off of, I'm just going to tell you the players I'm going to play. You're going to tell me the players you're going to play. There's no conversation about it. I fucking hate those kinds of things, and I think those things are bullshit. And if that's what you want to listen to, go find that, and that's fine, because this is never what's going to be here. I think on most weeks we're generally not super argumentative, but when it happens, I think it's great. And it's not planned. It's not anything. It's because we believe in our takes and we're a strong opinion in our takes. And that's what I want. I want people that stand by their takes and believe in that, because that tells me that they're passionate about it and they believe in it. They're not just coming out here and just throwing some names out here and calling it a day, because we all, at the end of the day, are messing with people's money, right? People listen, they want to learn something. So there's value in that a lot more than a redraft pod or a dynasty podcast, because we're messing with people's money here. And so if you're not passionate about it and you don't believe in it, then get the fuck out. And so, like I said, I don't care if the person has a negative opinion on it. I don't really care. Go listen to something else, because this isn't for you. and I'm fine with that. Like, it just pissed me off. Like, that's the one thing. Say that to me, and like it just pisses me off.
HTK, Hot Take Kev, unleashed at the end of the DJ Nation podcast. We should have had that at the beginning, boy. That's a treat for everybody who made it all the way. What is this now? We're 78 minutes in to the podcast. So listen, we appreciate actually more than that now that I'm looking at it, to be honest. But anyway, we appreciate everybody who's coming on 108 minutes in. We are very passionate about it here at the DFS DJ Nation. I think anybody who's in the Slack chat, anybody who's interacted with us would know that. And it's not even I don't even want to do a plug. It's not any type of selfish play, but I don't think we would get the guests that we have gotten. If you go back and look through our queue, through our podcast history, when we started, how we started, and to get where the point we are, and even the guests we've had this year, I don't think we're getting those guests without some credit to our names, the passion that we bring to it, and just the authenticity. When, if we hit on a play, we drum the beat, we'll take it to the grave. We've won big money, we've lost with everybody who's been a part of the DFS DJ Nation with us. So I think they know that, we're not saying to play certain guys and then going in and turning in lineups that have nowhere resemblance to them. I talked about Devontae Freeman on Thanksgiving. I played him. Kev, you talked about Christian Blank on Thanksgiving. You played him. We played some bonehead plays that it might seem like. We played some plays that were dart throws and they paid off. So we're here for the people. We're here because we're degenerates, and that's where the whole thing came from. We wanted to share that with everybody and kind of get them on board. So for those of you who have stuck by the DJ Nation and are part of the family, we appreciate you. For those who are on the outside looking in, we want you to come on in, share those thoughts with us, get into the YouTube channel. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know that we're rambling too long. Let us know that Kev's a donkey and is coming up with these ridiculous plays. Let me know when I'm thinking it's way too outside the box and playing Delvin Hodges is not going to be a good EV for my bankroll. We want you guys involved. Don't just, send the review. Get involved with the family. I guarantee you will not regret it. And with that being said, we got the Slack chat. Hit us up. Get in there. We want to see you. It's week 14. We're going into it. For myself, Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me on Twitter. Kev Steele at FantasyRap13. It's the DJ Nation DFS podcast. We'll see you guys for week 15. We're coming to the end here. We're grinding it out the last couple weeks before playoff season, where we'll join you. But until then, good luck with your bankroll. Good luck in week 14, and we'll see you next week. Peace.